Good morning. If you're seeing this, something probably went technically wrong, so you're seeing the video recording of Hacking for Human Bias Considerations in Design, presentation for the ASU Hacks for Humanity 2020. And my name is Miguel Fernandez. And the checklist I'll be discussing will be called FALA.docx, and you should have that in your Google Drive, or if not, you can get that at newclassroom.com. So let me begin. So, is it a great app? You're developing apps, concepts, programs, ideas. Is it a great app that uses facial recognition as a password? Does that contribute to something useful? And it decreases fraud, and it customizes an experience for a customer. And it even helps with visitor identification, who should be here and who should not. That sounds like a great app, correct? By show of hands. Sure? Well, it's facial recognition. It's a different kind of facial recognition as applied. But let me walk you through an example. So here's a 2020 website for a product related to facial recognition from NTech Labs. And as you can see in their 2020 website, it's talking about augmenting intelligence in using facial recognition, basically using algorithms that will help you be accurate in your use of the app. So that's the 2020 website. Looks fine, correct? Augmenting intelligence. Okay. The actual product, Find Face Facial Recognition, Solutions for Government and Business. Now, the sidebar says greater than 1.5 billion faces in the database. So, does anyone see where there might be a slight issue right now with this? Is it the actual product? Maybe. Is it the fact that there's a database with 1.5 billion faces? How did they get there? Is it that it's a solution for government and business? Well, that doesn't automatically make it bad, but can there be problems with this 2020 version? Well, let's go back and look at 2018. The same product. And what's it advertising as its use? Ethnicity recognition. Now this is 2018. Is there something about this that strikes you as either wrong or potentially hazardous, open to abuse? Yes. Ethnicity. How does it recognize ethnicity? Well, it goes further. This is also from 2018. Not only does it give you the facial recognition, which it promises, it says verification of who that person is up to 99% accurate, stores billions of people in your own gallery, so you can select who belongs and who doesn't belong to that group. Okay, is it starting to rankle you a little bit, stick in your craw a little bit? What about the fact that it can be used to identify emotions, gender, and age? Now, why does someone need to use a product to identify emotions, gender, and age? Is there a potential for abuse of that? And video support, so you can use it in live streaming. So you've got the ability, and its intentions were good, but in 2018, they're selling it as identify what race, what ethnicity is someone, what is their gender, what is their age. Now, if you look at 2019, why do they change things from 2018 to 2019? Possibly because facial recognition fails on race. Government study says it has been abused. So here is a little extra on that. The company actually connects to Russian surveillance, and they sell internationally, including to China. In fact, it's been used to identify people that the government does not consider good people. What does that mean? That depends on who uses the product. So what that example really has to do with is abuse of technology. And here's one right here in the United States. So ad tech. Ad tech is marketing technology using big data. And some of the stuff it promises for the user is the ability to predict propensity for addiction. Now, how is this doing it? It's looking at your data, where you're at, where you live, who you associate with, how you identify yourself, what is your social media presence. And it's saying, I can predict your mental health possibilities. And if you look near the top, you can predict your propensity for divorce. And it gives you a demographic breakdown. So not just apps, but big data can be used and abused. And where does that tie in with what we have here? Well, there's at least 4 human-centered, bias-aware socio-technical considerations that you should consider when developing any product, any app, any concept, anything that has to do with technology, especially now in the artificial intelligence age. And the acronym is FALA. FALA. These are 4 areas of human-centered design that you have to consider in any endeavor, in any innovation that you plan. What does FALA stand for? Filter bubble. What are your biases or your predilections for the industry that you're designing for? For you as a designer, what do you see and what do you not see? You tend to see things and produce things in that vision. That's a human quality. But it gets very narrowcast when you're specific to an industry, when you only associate with people your own way. Filter bubble. So you want to make sure that you consider what are you missing when you design something because of the filter bubble. Abuse. Beware of unintentional use of your app, product, concept, or idea. And that's something that you really do have to explore, not just for humanistic reasons, but for lawsuit reasons and others. Left behind. So FAL so far of the FALA. Left behind. What customer, what user, what client? Humanity. What is being left behind? Who can't use your product and why? Who get considered in its ability to be of value? And then finally, accessibility and usability, which pretty much all the companies out there are aware of. Be able to serve your customer no matter what their particular abilities are. Be considerate. 4 concerns that you should consider as you're coming up with your products and ideas. FALA. Filter bubble, abuse, left behind, accessibility. So what does that mean? Well, I'll give you an example. So here is a product that was developed and they're in the repair stage. A repair stage, and we'll talk more about that a little bit, is when you're in the middle, before release of an idea, that you add human labor as a way to harmonize a technical system. And what does that mean? When it's going out to be used by people, you have to look at your product again. What is missing? What doesn't work? What was left out? And technological systems do not exist in a bubble. Sometimes we're spending so much energy and time in developing an idea or a product that we forget the user. And who's the real user? Who are the mediators of that use? And this is just an example, really interesting presentation that talks about how they forgot to, in considering a product that uses AI in the hospital, they forgot to consider the role of nurses. And when they added the role of nurses as a mediator, as something that harmonizes the technical system because they use it every day, they found that quite a few things change, quite a few flaws, quite a few biases that they had to address. So that's an example of a product created, prepped, and then had to go into a repair stage for FALA. And again, what does that FALA mean? These are 4 things you're looking out for, and the 4 things are: filter bubble. Are you not seeing something because of who you are and who you work for and what industry? Abuse. Can a product be abused? Who's left behind? The L. Left behind. Who's not addressed? And then accessibility. So that's the what. FALA is the what you're looking for when you're working with designing anything, technology, AI, or somewhere in the middle. Now when? When do you check in your design stage? So here you are at the ASU Hacks for Humanity. You're spending 36 hours from concept to pitch for a worthwhile cause in 3 different tracks. When do you check for FALA concerns? Well, you check at 4 points. At the concept. So you come up with an idea, you agree as a team, this would be great, it meets a need. At the concept stage, you should use the FALA checklist, which you're going to see in a second. At the concept stage. You don't have to limit your product idea, but you have to be considerate and place it in context of those FALA things, which are, again, filter bubble from the designer, abuse, left behind, and accessibility. When you're considering your audience, when you do the repair for human stage, and that means as you get your pseudocode, as you get your concept into something that's almost a prototype, repair it for humans. Who's really using it? And go through that checklist. And then finally, at the pitch stage. So you're getting ready to pitch your idea. It's now at least more than a concept, whether it's a presentation, prototype, or working code, or working app. At the pitch stage, last call, you want to go through the FALA checklist. What is the checklist? And again, you should have it. Well, think of it as a set of criteria you want to examine, and I put it as a pre-flight and as a post checklist. So the pre-flight are the ones you definitely want to check on the first two wins, when you have your concept and when you're talking about audience. And as you can see, what are you looking for? And this is just something you discuss among your team members. Is it free from bias in the design, form, and function? What that means, that's something to discuss. Even in having that discussion, you'll understand from different points of view involved, you want to shoot for that freedom from bias. Integration, adaptability, universal design. Are you considering how it integrates with the regular life use of everything else, as well as your product? Identity and privacy. This is a huge thing. Privacy, identity, and even security weren't always embedded in the past, in the concept stage of design. Now it's expected. So how does your product ensure privacy? How does it respect identity? Dependencies on traditions and norm assumptions. Well, does it depend on what an ideal audience is for you? Does it depend on expectations that are short and limited? Place it within a context of the future. How will it fit into the world in 6 months, in a year? Courtesy and dignity consideration, and this has to do with identity, with gender, with use. Make those conversations happen. And those 5 things are things you want to check for at least 2 of the stages, at the problem, at the concept stage, and at the audience. And there's also a post checklist. The post is shorter, but just as important, and it's something you definitely want to have a conversation, and I know your time is limited, so you want to make sure to put these 2 stages in and have this part of the checklist as integral to it. The repair for human stage, you've got something more than just a concept now, and then the pitch. At those 2 stages, you want to check for, has it excluded any population of users? Think of it this way. Are you limiting customers? Are you missing customers? But also, are you missing people who would sue because your concept or your product doesn't take them into account? Unintentional and abuse cases, and this can be fun because it's a brainstorming session of, well, how can this be used in different ways than you intend? And what you come up with is something that you don't necessarily have to solve, but you have to be able to answer if it comes up in a pitch. What is an abuse of your idea, your design, your concept? Accessibility in the written documents and specs, so make sure that it takes into account people with different abilities, with issues of accessibility. Again, if you just have images as your pitch, what audience are you missing? Think about that. And then value-sensitive pitching, that's just a fancy word for make sure to be considerate to anyone who it either leaves out or, as value-sensitive pitching works, that it's morally correct and fits within a humanistic framework. Think about what you're doing. You're doing ASU Hacks for Humanity. Okay? So the humanity part is probably part of the rubric upon which you're going to be judged. So be careful in making any mistakes in language, in anything like that. So let me give you an example, and then you're going to do a little interactive part here. So here's a pitch. Here's a product. Fits one of the 3 themes, hopefully. Maybe aging, maybe safety. Develop a wristwatch mini drone for hikers entering long hikes in areas with no phone reception that flies for reception, flies out and finds reception if the hiker falls, passes out, or feels ill. So it's taking your pulse, it's reading who you are, detects a problem, detects a fall, it flies off, kind of like a little watch, finds reception, cell phone reception, and sends out an alert. Sounds good? Sounds like a humanistic interest? Sounds like a humanistic purpose? Sure does. So does it meet the theme? What do you think? Absolutely. So what are the Socio-Technical bias considerations, checklist issues with this? Well, look at that list. Okay, so is it freedom from bias in design, form, and function? What's the pitch part? Wristwatch mini drone for hikers entering long hikes with no phone reception. Okay, is there any population that can't use it? Does it make any assumptions? These are things that someone who's going to invest in your product or judge your product wants you to consider. Okay? Does it work without disturbing the environment? Yes, no, maybe. Can it be abused? Is there any courtesy or dignity consideration for someone who uses it? Is there any excluded population of users? And then how are you going to pitch it? What can someone pick at your product idea for missing out? So a great idea doesn't get diminished by being considered for humanistic interests. Does not get diminished for human-centric design. It's just another phase, like proofreading, like figuring out the economics and viability of a product, app, or concept that you need to consider when pitching and presenting. So how do you do this? You've got a limited time setting. You're not specialists. You don't have a specific person who's an expert on judging the human-centric design and liability and risk. Well, you use that checklist. Okay, 4 different stages. FALA, you're looking for filter bubble. What are you as a designer missing? Abuse possibilities. What population is left behind? And does it address accessibility? Checking it on 4 different stages. The when. Okay, in the concept stage, in the audience stage, in the repair for human use stage, and then finally in pitch. Use that checklist. Have a peer discussion in your group on how these technologies might affect different populations. Okay? Evaluate 2 or 3 of the big ones, 2 or 3 big risks as red teams, meaning you can put team members against each other to figure out how you can go around, pitch, and overcome those problems. And again, it doesn't have to be solved in your product, but it has to be at least be addressed and considered. So checklists, peer discussion on how it affects populations, and then make it adversarial among your team members. One person does the pitch, one person does the response and looks for holes in it. So the socio-technical aspects of technology and design are a full-out phase to be considered when doing anything. Innovation, AI, app that can be used. You can find your checklist at this location or at a Google Drive as we presented. And then when you're working on language accessibility, just like you have formats, APA, MLA, you can look at standards.htm for specifics. And if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Thank you.